First speaker is from Ericsson. She's the head of strategy at the business area Digital Services. Welcome, FARJOLA PECO. And please, the stage is yours. Give your talk.
So what do we do at Digital Services? Well, our ambition is for a business innovation that allows our communication service providers to capabilities. Digital Services is at the core of delivering 5G networks. And more specifically, what we do is really develop and deliver 5G core, business support, and automation solutions. And by now, I think I have mentioned automation twice. So then, there's no wonder why I'm here then. Let me take you through it. I think we have started with automation, and automation is a journey. But what about AI? And I think as we have continuously done so in any of the Gs of the network, with AI, we can move closer to zero touch. So if we look a little bit into the evolution and of the networks, of the telecom networks, we see that the new applications are placing higher and higher demands onto the networks. There is one overarching mega trend for the telecoms industries that the network is expanding in scope and areas of usage. In the 3G era, only service providers themselves could use the network for their own services. But then 4G came, and it is when things became a bit more complicated, as when mobile broadband and data became the main driver, other players in the industry and the ecosystem thrived on top of the network. And what we see now with 5G is that the network will be even deeper embedded into new contexts. And looking into the pandemic as we are right now, connectivity is key. And yes, unfortunately, apparently it happens you can't see me through video today, right? And that's the importance of connectivity. Looks like I have to call Telly afterwards, but it's embedded in every context. And this includes industrial automation, mission-critical IoT, and advanced consumer services like virtual reality, augmented reality, and gaming. And what we would like to deliver is an outstanding user experience. This is the reality that communication service providers must meet today and also will meet increasingly in the future. And if I were to just look a little bit into the numbers from our mobility report, then we forecast that by 2025, 2.6 billion 5G subscriptions will be available globally. And those are accounting for 29% of all mobile subscriptions at the time. And in 2025, there will be 8.9 billion mobile subscriptions, both all through the ranges of 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. So definitely there are significant portion of investments across all the industries that are expected to be driven by these new and advanced services that are based on 5G technology. And what we see is a fundamental change that is impacting not only the consumer market, but many, many industries. So what are then the different factors that are impacting the network and what they need to take care of, right? So why do we speak of AI, of this really, of this technology, and how can we apply that into our domain? So this is a bit the journey I'm taking you through. And if we look a little bit into the different factors, I think, as I mentioned earlier on, is that there will be a multiplicity of use cases, and all that might have slightly different requirements, right? So instead of supporting just a few straightforward use cases like the voice and data and text, now it has to also deal with possibly thousands of different use cases that are all delivered at the same time in an automated fashion. Let's think about data hungry, and there is a need for capacity to deal with extremely data hungry applications. And perhaps the case right now that maybe I cannot be on video is me because most probably everyone is working from home in the neighborhood today on a Friday. So how do you reach that capacity? Many of the use cases are dependent on very high capacity needs and essentially fiber through the air. And this could be remote. I mean, now we're speaking about use cases in the future, and this could be one of the use cases of remote controlling a vehicle in a mine that navigates with the help of a multiple 8K cameras to stream real-time AR feeds to a mobile set. Think about that. And whichever this use case is, building this network with ubiquitous connectivity everywhere, such as capacity, really drives complexity. And to add more to this complexity from the use cases is the amount of diverse devices. With the explosion of IoT, many more devices and increasingly different kinds of devices will connect to the network. They will all have their own characteristics and needs, and the network should cater for all this, right? And to add more to it, security, that is absolutely uncompromisable. As more use cases are connected and increasingly critical enterprise use cases, the demands on security rise dramatically. And last two, I would think, is about the experience, right, of these use cases. You have to have the experience. Not only the network has to cope with all diverse use cases, but it also has to deliver a great experience for each and one of them. And that is how you measure your KPIs, your SLAs. And last, I would say that you have to have the agility to bring the new service to the market with a high quality and launch at the market. The industry is moving fast, and to be able to have that time to market, you need to be able to have that agility and flexibility to reach those demands. And this is where AI comes in as an accelerator to really realize the opportunities that waits to cut through the complexity. So what are the technologies that we are adding to the networks that AI can support? And these are some of the cases we have highlighted. And the very first one is looking at it from the radio access network point of view, right? And that is the densification of RAN to deliver the capacity. And here we think about the building 5G to meet the demands of a data-hungry and throughput-dependent use cases. And this means a significantly more dense network with more nodes and more integrated network design. So you take AI from the design down to the delivery and operation of the network. So if you think about those use cases of walking indoor, outdoor, and that call breaking somewhere in between, you need to take that into account. You have to run the distributed RAN and software shared between radio sites on the delocalized nodes. Virtualization, and this is at the heart of the digital services. This is something I'm very fond of, right? And to be able to meet the demands of the flexibility and handling of these different use cases, this is where our communication service providers are transforming their networks to virtual cloud-based environments. And this is the year we have really gone full speed ahead with our virtual packet core, right? 5G. So this requires completely different way of managing and running the networks from just delivering a box, right? Now you have a service deployed in the cloud. And now you're looking into handling the services across domains in the whole cloud ecosystem, where you have multi-suppliers, multi-technology, and of course, a multi-operator environment. Edge computing, super important, a crucial technology to really deliver for example, really low latency type of use cases. And I think this is where we add the compute power at the edge of the network architecture and landscape. And this really changes then the complete complexity of orchestrating the services on the network. Network slicing, and this is for unique network setups. And this is where we talk about cognitive network slicing. Network slicing really holds that promise to deliver unique networks to individual use cases. So how do you do that, and how do you manage different SLAs towards several heterogeneous markets, as well as simultaneously provision, run, and quality assure multiple individual network slices? Our advanced operations for experience and efficiency, this is where the service providers really are trying to reshape and rebuild their operations to be complete data-driven. And I think this is one of the areas they have been really first to take this on board. And I think with our managed services and operations engine, I think that is we have seen and ripped off some of the benefits of AI, because let's face it, it's been rather a tough journey for AI to be embraced by the industry, as it's very difficult sometimes to look at it from the business perspective. And I think this is where I'm trying to focus a little bit with you in this session to look at what are the market trends and how they're really driving then these technology shifts. And to say the least, I think if we look into the demands, if we look into these capabilities that are required to meet the demands, what we believe at Ericsson is really that deploying artificial intelligence in the right place in the network, I think that is what really we are all about. And by looking at all the increasingly complex demands, we think that the evolution of artificial intelligence, together with technologies that we marry one-to-one, we believe that that will definitely show the business value for our partners as well as for our customers. And this is what we call AI by design. So if I were to go then a little bit, into the customer's shoes, right? What are our service providers saying when we talk about artificial intelligence? And this has been going on for quite a decade plus, right? So if this AI and automation was the answer, then what was the question, and how are their needs, right? And this is where we have run a survey back in the day, but I think the number when we did now recently, it's very similar, and that has increased perhaps to an 80%. It varies per region as well, but definitely our service providers see artificial intelligence as a natural part of their network, and they really welcome these AI-powered solutions. Those are becoming a must now into almost all the discussions and negotiations, right? And this is where we see that almost 80% of all respondents globally would like to embed this technology, because of course, when we look into our solutions, we're looking for efficient and really keeping a low TCO and enabling them to grow into new revenues, right? And I think that's where we see that AI can make a difference. So then how do we apply AI across Ericsson, right? And to be really a true leader in AI in the telco domain, and I think this is kind of important to understand, because as many of you attending here today know that there is the general domain of artificial intelligence, and there is the narrow domain of artificial intelligence. And we as Ericsson are working in the narrow domain, right? We are applying artificial intelligence within the telecom space. We have been working in the networks for 140 plus years, and AI has been part of that most probably since in its infancy, right? Given the different stages and evolutions that has gone through, right? And we're doing so even today. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is really to automate the full stack and empower the network operations and services with artificial intelligence, where it makes sense and how it makes sense, right? We evolve the current product offerings and utilize the AI capabilities to differentiate Ericsson's portfolio. And where we can and grow, we explore new business opportunities powered by AI. And this is where it's really important to work with the ecosystem, with our customers and partners. So what does that mean in terms of our portfolio, right? If we were to look a little bit into a simplified view of the telecom stack in that sense. And AI by design really means that we carefully think about where to apply AI in our portfolio. And that has been on for quite some years, and there are quite a few solutions. It's very spread right across the network. So in a way, I call it that we democratize AI within Ericsson, right? And we look at it example by example. We look in from the customer intelligence, for instance, from digital BSS. We look into management and orchestration. We look into the radio access and really embed intelligence within the node. And that is quite clever, actually, because to be able to handle that amount of data, to be able to train, learn, and also execute that on the node without compromising the quality that is something else, right? And I think you understand the complexity of the technicalities there, right? And of course, we look into cloud core, but also very important into our services. And that is how we have transformed our complete managed services from what was before running in the network operations centers with first and second and third field type of engineers into being completely almost data-driven. But let us look a little bit into the problems we're trying to solve, right? I have mentioned a few things here, and I've talked about the complexity. I have given you now a big picture of how the portfolio looks like, what kind of solutions and things we have. But what are the problems that we have solved, right? And of course, we have established that our AI targets with service providers to meet their challenges and efficiencies, right? But we also have focused our work with AI around the problems we think that matter, right? And this could be of all kinds. And we have like 6 clusters of these different challenges. And the answers that these problems answer is as to how to ensure the network performance, how to improve energy efficiency that meets demands of sustainability, how to turn operations into an efficient business enabler. How do you realize the value of the network slicing with a cloud-native core, right? And how to create an outstanding future-proof customer experience and to bring the best of your existing infrastructure, right? And for each of these, let me try to, because the proof is in the pudding, right? So if we look into the value that AI has brought onto these different cases, then these are some of the benefits and the differentiators, right? And if we look into the first one, with an 80% better network load distribution, I think what does that mean? Then in terms of a self-organizing network, this is where we look at a more balanced use of resources. And more specifically here, we're looking into the spectrum allocation, right? And on top of that, we have managed to better utilize some of the network assets as well as close the loop automation at scale by enabling and reducing time to market. If we look into the network prediction score, right? And that is quite an important NPS, as it is actually called on the slide here. Solutions combining analytics and machine learning to predict the network NPS, this network score, to manage the network experience more proactively. As we said, it's really important to deliver on that experience. And there are quite a few parameters you need to take into account to be able to deliver that prediction model, right? And this is where we have used machine learning to determine the best and the worst NPS scores, and also predict, because one thing is to be reactive, the second is to also be proactive, right? And this is where we use that to predict the poor NPS clusters on the first day of each month, so then improvement can actually be taken immediately. And when you have a high impact KPI, those are actually identified and actioned on. So then we bring it down to ground. When we look into the radio access network, the KPI degradation prediction is really important. And this is where we talk about the user experience. And this is impacted by that performance, right? And this is where we analyze the data that's coming from our operation support systems. And through the applied machine learning models, we can predict the possible throughput degradations or an increased latency before they occur and automatically trigger corrective actions. That if we look into assisted paging, I think that's really important when it comes to, we declare an 80% here, right, of reduced signaling. What this really means is that we have reduced the load, both in radio access network and the MME, then basically we free up capacity and defer investment for the carriers. So we manage that in a better way. So the last two, if we look into the active MIMO sleep, I think this is the sleep mode traffic, right? And this is very important for the low energy scheduler functions and also the cell sleep, right? And make sure that we can predict those traffic patterns and autonomously turn off the antennas as the requirements are low to reduce the energy usage. Very important for our sustainability. benefit there. And last but not least, I think it's the 5G aware traffic management. And with AI embedded in the RAN compute software, the 5G capable devices can be directed to the best 5G capable cells by keeping the users with 5G phones in the 5G coverage. So this is where we look into ranking based on the models, and then we have the dual connectivity capability on certain cells, and we'll be able to direct the users to the right cell. And we have seen that here we have a 25% 5G icon coverage for the end users. So these are some of the problems we are really solving, measuring. But then if we look a little bit onto the technology side, right? What kind of technology we're using when we speak about AI? And I'm very particularly fond of this technology overview, so to say, layout, being provided by our Ericsson research, right? So we are looking into two angles of this. It's the machine learning, but it's also the machine reasoning. And I think this is where we have kind of combined the two, where we talk about the machine learning, we talk about driven by the massive amounts of data, and these are managed by data science. And the second one, when we talk about machine reasoning, is driven by the facts and knowledge managed by logic. So why do we talk about this, right? The reason why we talk about that, because I strongly believe that when machine learning meets with machine reasoning, this is what's going to give us the context of explaining the events into the future, right? So it's not just important to look at the data and the insights, but you also need to give them the right context. And whenever we talk about cognitive, this is what I mean. I mean that machine learning and machine reasoning come together. And I believe that this is going to be the key to take us towards that zero-touch vision that we talk about, right? And this is one of the hot emerging technologies in our industry that is real-time distributed automation that is a way to deal with these increasing complex networks, right? And zero touch is holistic. You don't get zero touch by just linking fragmented high touch management systems. It actually applies to the entire network life cycle, from the operations, from the product design, optimization, security, and all these need to be able to be powered by data and artificial intelligence. And these zero-touch networks of the future will definitely be characterized by the fact that they require almost no or very minimum human intervention in their day-to-day operations, right? So if we look a little bit into the cognitive autonomy software stack, right? How does that really look like? So this is where we look into machine learning models and our execution environment, where we have tools and libraries for implementing and executing our based agents and components, something that we have in-house. And on top of that, this is where we're really looking into intent-driven autonomy layer. This is where we look into the knowledge representation, reasoning, and actuation. And the combination of two, I think that is when we talk about AI native type of products, and also extend that to imply that we bring it together towards the self-operating networks. And as I spoke about the zero touch and looking into how this machine learning and machine reasoning marry each other to bring us towards this cognitive, this is how we talk about our, so to say, operating, our self-operating network, right? And you need to look at it in the view of the different layers. So if you look at it from the infrastructure, that is where you need to make sure that you monitor the network and the data center and its resources. But you need to have a closed loop for that. You need to be able to have the feedback loop in place. You need to be able to have a closed loop for VNFs, right? We talked about virtualization and virtual network functions. That is where we have a compromised multiple of VMs and hosts. How do you assure the integration and the NFVO? When we look into the closed loop for the end-to-end slices and network services, that is super important as it goes through the core, radio, transport, and at the end, you need to make sure that you have the service assurance integration with the service orchestration. And that goes under the closed loop orchestration, right? That is where we look into dynamic activation and the adaptive inventory. Then if you go to the next layer of the network, right, so it's almost like an onion, then you look into the subscriber and the application experience. And this is where you work with analytics-driven closed loop, right? You have recommendations, you have predictions happening. But then you need to elevate yourself one step up. And that is when you talk about the business intent-driven automation. So based on the business needs, what, when, and why do you need it, you actually have to trigger it. And that activation needs to go all the way down to the infrastructure. So it's really important to have a well-aligned data architecture. It's really important to be able to have aligned platform to be able to get this holistic view of a closed loop and the whole cognitive OSS. So if we were to look into then unique capabilities of AI, right, and what do we really think at Ericsson and AI by design, I think first and foremost is that our AI is all other than artificial. It is really built on the strong foundation of combining the deep telecom domain expertise with data science and artificial intelligence knowledge. And these skills always work hand in hand, close to customer problems, collaborating to solve them. And this means that we know what the right problems are to solve, how to solve them, and what a good solution looks like. Number two is really looking into differentiation, right? And really making sure that we differentiate ourselves, but also we have an AI-ready technology. And this is where we look into our portfolio. And this is where we look into making sure that we have not only access to the network node data, and we handle that in an ethical and secure way. And this is where we talk about responsible AI. We take that very seriously, and by responsible AI, we talk about a trusted, secure, and ethical use of data. And also explainable, which is very important in that perspective. And I think we really need to look into co-creation, and I think this is really important from my point of view. Really, to be able to evolve in this environment, it's through co-creation with customers and partners in the ecosystem, really developing the solutions together, and this is really key. Yes, some of the problems we know, and those have we have solved them within the network. But how does the customer think? How do they take that on board? And what do they see towards their customers? And what's their problem? How do we translate that into requirements? So it's really important to listen to our customer and customer's customer and work together in this domain to validate the use cases and solutions. And we can do this very efficiently with pre-trained algorithms. We can adapt them to different customer contexts. And with our global AI center, where we have really increased the competence of developing, I think it's a great way to get engaged in the industry and really make a difference. Make a difference in that case. So, in a nutshell, I think I'm just about on time here. We really believe that yes, the AI was the answer, and the answer to certain questions. We really try to solve specific telecom challenges of today and also tomorrow, and that is what we call at Ericsson AI by design. And this goes across the portfolio at Ericsson, not just digital services, where we look into our core and orchestration, our business support solutions, but also in our radio, also in our managed services and also in emerging technology. So it's intertwined across the business. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I hope you have found this helpful.
Let's see the first question here. Where do you see AI in telco by 2030?
By 2030, I strongly believe in the zero-touch type of automation and really moving more and more towards the cognitive type of services that we offer. So for me, I think it's really important to see that realized. So I see new architectures that are driven by data, and also where we have more and more automated, autonomous type of solutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Then the next question is from Celia. You place AI at the machine reasoning side, where facts and knowledge are managed by logic. Does that imply that logic is a precondition to use AI? How it is applied?
I would say that logic is part of execution, right, as well. I think you have the two parts in my view. You have the numerical part, and that is where we work with supervised learnings, with unsupervised learnings. You have lots of data there. That is the numeric part that I call. But then when we look into the knowledge and the knowledge reasoning and logic, that is where I see the symbolic part of AI, right, running. And I think that is where you really need to be able to work with your knowledge base, with your knowledge graphs, to be able to understand why certain events have all happened and how you would guide the next activation, right, to happen. So I think that is where I see the distinction, but also they are very related, right? So because then you see that they're actually blending in, and it's very difficult to draw that straight line in between, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. Next question from Paul, and yeah, I like these kind of questions, which is a little bit sometimes personal from the sense because you can select the example when AI solved some problem in the telco. So please share your example where AI have solved problem in the telco domain.
I think if I understood the question right, because it's a bit of breaking in between, but if I were to share a personal experience, actually has been a very simple case we did at Ericsson Research, actually, together with the team back in 2010, 2011, when it was almost a decade back. But that is when we started to transform our managed services, and we delivered a prototype to be able to actually sort out and really recommend tickets and solutions to the first and second field engineers in a managed service environment. I think from just a prototype that we enabled for the global network operations, and I remember down in Romania, this was like 10 years ago, we could save 30 million SEK, Swedish crowns, in 1 year. And that was a recommendation engine that we did based on a ticket example.
So basically you say this is the doctor of the network, right? An artificial intelligence aided recommendation engine that helps troubleshooting the network and taking the next step, if I understood correctly, right?
I think, as I said, right, this was 10 years ago. So of course, in that sense, it was slightly reactive. But I think when we look into the evolution and moving then...
So the next question, do you think explainable AI is important in the network management? Does the complex network need to explain in a simple terms to the, and there was some skip, sorry, in a simpler terms to the network operations center engineer what is happening? So,
absolutely, that is absolutely key, and I think that is why I believe that machine reasoning will be more and more important, because that's what I mean by understanding the context. And I think also the explainable part of AI, you need to have the people in the loop. And even though we believe, we think about the zero touch, the human needs to be involved throughout the process, right? And to be able to be involved throughout the process, then you need to have a very transparent and explainable way, right, as to how to do that. And I think academia and research, our research is actually really focusing on how to verify the models that we have and how to explain them, right? And I think these are two very key important questions from our research that we're working on.
Thank you. And then one last question also from Laurent. Do you have an AI strategy as a company? Do you see it as a strategic element, or is just the technology helping the efficiency and monetization?
It's a very good question. And I think absolutely we have an AI strategy as a company. We have a data strategy as a company. Data and AI go hand in hand very strongly. And that's exactly how we have actually formulated our strategy, right? The AI needs to be embedded in every single product and solution. That's what I meant by, really marrying it across the big portfolio. And that is our strategy. We want to really be the leaders within the telecom AI and the networks. We want to be the leaders of delivering those first networks out there, right? So very, very important. And I'll also like to add one more thing, because I think I spoke about the efficiency for our customers, and I spoke about the use cases that we deliver and we sell and so on and so forth. But AI is very important. There is another side of the coin here, and that is for our own internal efficiency and our own transformation. And we want to be a data-driven type of a company, and that's the transformation we are driving and going through end to end. And this is super important for us, right, to be able to transform internally. And I think this is where we have a lot of automated processes that we have taken through. And this is where I believe we are one of the first companies to have also robot process automations, and also you'd be able to employ a robot, right? Which I think is pretty cool, right, out there. So there are two sides of the coin. And what I actually spoke about is really our strategy towards embedding AI as a technology in our solutions. And that is where we see that we make a difference to our customers. And the problems that I mentioned are the problems of our customers, of the networks, right? So we want to maintain that leadership there. And the other side of the coin is definitely to use data and artificial intelligence for our own transformation. As at the end of the day, we also need to be a good partner and an agile partner to our customers, right?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your talk.